All right, what's going on, everyone? So we've got a ceasefire in the Middle East, I think. It's between the United States and Iran, maybe Israel. Also, the ceasefire may have already been violated, and it also might not go into effect until the fighting stops, which it hasn't. Today is pure chaos. All right, so we've got the United States claiming overwhelming victory. We've got Iran claiming overwhelming victory. The two sides are putting out terms that are very contradictory. Israel appears pretty pissed off, kind of blindsided that the war was ended without their consultation. And the Gulf countries are probably a little confused because after the ceasefire went into place, they have been dodging Iranian missiles and drones ever since. So, in fairness, I'm not sure that the countries negotiating this right now actually know what's happening. It is that all over the map. So we're going to do our best. I'm recording this at 10 a.m. Central on Wednesday, April 8th, 2026. We're going to do our best to break down what we know so far. But again, in fairness, I'm not sure Iran and the United States are even close to on the same page. So if this sounds contradictory, it is. So the best overview of where things sit right now, I think, came from Greg Carlstrom over at The Economist, where he said a few hours ago, quote, "If you're keeping score at home, the ceasefire includes Lebanon, Hezbollah, but also does not include Lebanon. America has agreed to all of Iran's demands, and Iran has agreed to all of America's demands. America will recognize Iran's right to enrichment and also insist on zero enrichment. Hormuz is completely open, but also Hormuz is subject to unclear limitations." That's not an exaggeration. That's actually kind of summarizing it well and making it sound simpler than it is. So last night or yesterday, President Trump threatened to eliminate an entire civilization if the Strait of Hormuz was not opened. And just before that deadline was reached, we started to get a lot of murmurings, a lot of rumors that they were in progress of making a deal. And then, bam, President Trump said, quote, "Subject to the Islamic Republic of Iran agreeing to the complete, immediate, and safe opening of the Strait of Hormuz, I agree to suspend the bombing and attack of Iran for a period of 2 weeks. This will be a double-sided ceasefire." Now, a couple keynotes there, or I'd say the most important one, it looks like the terms for getting to a 2-week ceasefire was the Iranian opening of the Strait of Hormuz, which was not and still is not listed as one of the key U.S. objectives in this conflict. We'll get to those in a minute that are regularly repeated by the White House. So it looks like we reached a ceasefire for Iran to open the strait that was open before the war began. And this is where you're going to get into, look, if we're going with the Iranian plan at this point, it's a big problem for the United States, just to be blunt. President Trump said the reason for doing so is that we have already met and exceeded all military objectives and are very far along with the definitive agreement concerning long-term peace with Iran and peace in the Middle East. In fact, there was a press conference earlier today that I listened into at the Pentagon where Secretary Hegseth gave a victory speech. He ran through Operation Epic Fury in the past tense and explained why this operation was so successful. Not is, not ongoing, was. This is the roll-up of everything U.S. forces did to win the war with Iran. That is how it is being presented. So, again, take that for what it's worth, but the framing by the U.S. government right now is mission complete. Trump last night said we received a 10-point proposal from Iran and believe it is a workable basis on which to negotiate. Almost all of the various points of past contention have been agreed to between the United States and Iran, but a 2-week period will allow the agreement to be finalized and consummated. We went over the Iranian 10-point plan yesterday in our video, and I left it as these are maximalist demands, so it's hard to imagine that this is anything other than the starting for a negotiation point. Now, we have the U.S. 15-point plan that I would be on board with. I think at least by and large is a net win for the United States, for the Middle East, and the world. The Iranian 10-point plan is essentially like an IRGC wish list. It's not good, and we're going to get into those in a minute here, but last night, President Trump said that that is the workable basis, the 10-point plan coming from Iran. Now, there must have been a little bit of confusion here, and no doubt a lot of people chiming in saying, hold on real quick. The 10-point plan does not address things like the Iranian nuclear program or the missiles or the proxies. How on earth is that a good starting point for negotiation? So President Trump today kind of followed up on that, quote, "There will be no enrichment of uranium, and the United States will, working with Iran, dig up and remove all of the deeply buried nuclear dust. It is now and has been under very exacting satellite surveillance. Nothing has been touched from the date of attack. We are and will be taking tariff and sanctions release with Iran. Many of the 15 points have already been agreed to." So already chaos, again, the theme of today. We've already shifted from the 10-point plan from Iran is the starting point for negotiations. And in less than 12 hours, we've shifted over to actually it's the U.S. 15-point plan that is now the starting point for negotiations. I don't know. It doesn't feel like this is actually going to go anywhere, is kind of where my gut feeling is. It feels like the United States wants out, that President Trump wanted an off-ramp, because what we are throwing out there is very hard to spin into a U.S. victory, to be blunt. After the ceasefire was announced, we saw continued Iranian attacks into the UAE, Kuwait, Israel, and elsewhere. In fact, just earlier, we got reports that another desalination plant in Kuwait was attacked like this morning from Iran. Also, after that ceasefire was announced, it does not look like the United States talked with Israel at all. Like, I think we just told them before it went into place that we are now in a ceasefire. It's not clear whether Israel is supposedly included in that or if Hezbollah is included in that. Anyways, Israel yesterday was in the midst of carrying out a pretty significant bombing campaign against Iran. So again, after President Trump said ceasefire is now in place, Israel went forward with their bombing campaign, hitting a number of targets throughout Iran. Now, what we're seeing this morning is that both sides are declaring victory in a number of different ways. We talked through Secretary Hegseth's speech. We got a statement from the Iranian Security Council talking about how this was an overwhelming victory for the Iranian people. The big question here, one of the big questions here, is around the Strait of Hormuz. We know that is a key sticking point. That is the strategic leverage that Iran has had since the opening of this conflict, or even before. It looks like they have ownership of it right now. So the Iranian Navy today told ships that they need permission to transit the Strait of Hormuz. Quote, "You must receive permission from the Iranian Navy for passing through the strait. Any vessel tries to transit without permission, it will be destroyed." So it looks like there's this toll system being set up. There's been additional reporting in the Financial Times today of how Iran plans to collect those tolls in cryptocurrency based off the number of barrels that are moving through. That was not a thing prior to the war. And now that seems what the Iranian regime is pushing for. Secretary Hegseth was asked about this. Does the Iranian regime have control of the Strait? He pivoted away from that question and didn't answer it during his press conference. Jonathan Karl at ABC put out a note earlier saying that this morning he talked to President Trump and asked if he is okay with the Iranians charging a toll for all ships that go through the Strait of Hormuz. He told me there might be a joint U.S.-Iran venture to charge tolls. Quote, "We're thinking of doing it as a joint venture. It's a way of securing it, also securing it from lots of other people. It's a beautiful thing." So it seems like at least the conversation of Iran controlling the Strait of Hormuz and charging tolls, millions of dollars for each ship, is at least an acceptable option right now. In fact, President Trump, we have saying that maybe the United States would be doing that alongside Iran. So that, on its own, not great, to say the least. That means technically the strait is open. It is now exclusively under the control of the IRGC. That is a lot of revenue pouring into Iran, like 64 billion, I think was the number I saw, per year, pouring into Iran that was not there before this war started. Now, looking at the objectives, and this is where I think it's really worth focusing. We've got the objectives laid out by the United States, and then we've got the Iranian 10-point plan that they have laid out that supposedly is the starting point for negotiations. So we'll compare these two. The U.S. objectives, as laid out last week, or reiterated last week by the White House, was to destroy Iran's missile arsenal, annihilate their navy, destroy terrorist proxies, and ensure Iran can never obtain a nuclear weapon. Turning over to the 10 points, and this is as released from Press TV, which is an official channel of the Iranian regime. 1, a complete halt to aggression against Iran. 2, continued Iranian control over the Strait of Hormuz and coordination of passage through it with Iran. That is a win for Iran. That is something they did not have before the war. They have now, starting with these 10 points. Again, we really got to take this with such a grain of salt. This is supposedly the starting point. All right? This is a horrible starting point for the United States. So Iran wants full control over the Strait of Hormuz. 3, Iran will be able to enrich uranium. Again, if we leave this conflict and Iran is still permitted to maintain and enrich uranium, how do you call that anything but a failure? It was one of the key, if not the key reason we went into this conflict in the first place. 4, removal of all primary sanctions. And 5, removal of all secondary sanctions. 6, annulment of all UN Security Council resolutions against Iran. 7, annulment of all resolutions by the Board of Governors of the International Atomic Energy Agency against Iran. Those are when I say these are the maximalist demands, that is what is being laid out by a country that is winning or has won, and said these are the terms of your surrender. This is what you have to do. So already we're at number 7. Iran, according to this, is getting more than they started the war with, and we're going to remove a bunch of sanctions on the back end. Number 8 is the payment of compensation to Iran. 9, the withdrawal of U.S. combat forces from the region. And 10, cessation of fighting on all fronts, including against the Islamic resistance in Lebanon. Mark Levin, a podcaster, radio host that has been very hawkish in the war with Iran, said, quote, "These 10 points are an absolute disaster." Now, this is where we need to be careful with this and take all of this with a grain of salt, because according to President Trump, this 10-point plan is the starting point, and a lot of this stuff has already been agreed upon. It's not good, right? So we have kind of shifted the window of what is acceptable in these terms. Before this war began, there was no consideration that we were going to go to Iran and say, hey guys, you can keep enriching uranium. By the way, would you like control over the Strait of Hormuz? And in the meantime, we're going to remove all sanctions and pay you compensation. Right? Like the fact that that's even in the conversation is a major shift from before the war began. So unless we're watching like the capitulation of all time, I'm hard pressed to believe that the United States is actually going to agree to this. But again, it brings it back to this kind of sudden out of nowhere, okay, peace deal, we won, time to bring everybody home. Was there more pressure mounting on President Trump than we are publicly aware of? Because this is out of left field, and from everything that I can see at this point, is very quick to jump to the Iranian solution, which is to the net benefit of the Iranian regime and the net detriment of the United States, Israel, and our allies in the Gulf Coast. So we'll see how this develops over the course of the next couple days. Now, for anyone interested in keeping up with this, we're trying to provide as regular updates as possible over on Substack, consolidating all content there, long form, short form, interviews, and then the daily research for each one of these videos with links and sources. So if interested, check that out in the link below. But thanks for watching, and we'll see y'all next time.